All righty. Welcome, 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 everybody, to Black Haven's first virtual gathering of the year, Black Havens across Connecticut. I'm your host and MC, Brianna Chance. Pronouns she, her, hers. New Haven born and raised, classical musician, future educator, artivist, and Black Haven artist administrator. Black Haven is a collective of artists and arts administrators of color who center and uplift Black artists statewide. And some of our administrators include the lovely Kassad Bullock, Danessa Pedroso, Selwa Abdusabor, Isaiah Edwards, Jisoo Sheen, and so many more. And Black Haven is currently fundraising. I had to let y'all know we have met 80% of our fundraising goals to launch our initiatives, such as Black Haven Film Festival and our Oasis concert series. So with the Black Haven Film Festival, we want to amplify Black films in our neighborhoods, as well as those Black cinematographers. And we hope to produce some trend-setting productions with our Oasis concert series in the upcoming year. Our hope at Black Haven is that our work can take us through and uplift Black art statewide. I'm so excited to be here with you all today as we take a journey through some of Connecticut's major cities to explore what art means to us as Black folks. And we're so glad to have Adrienne Jefferson, Director of Cultural Affairs for the City of New Haven, sharing the space with us today. And I'm actually passing it over to you, Adrienne, to tell us a little bit more about yourself and why we should support Black Haven.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Bree. Thank you, Selwa. Thank you, Black Haven, for having me. I speak at a lot of stuff, but I am so honored to be here speaking with Black Haven and being in solidarity with Black Haven because of what they represent. And I just cannot wait to tell you everything about why I love them. I feel like there's a number of different things that I could have talked about today, but I really want to just center everything that to me really hits the heart of Black Haven and why I connect so deeply. For me, Black Haven defies the norms and pushes arts and culture to do better across the entire state of Connecticut. The panelists that you're going to hear from today are disruptors of culture. They are people who speak out and they say things that may not be the most popular thing to say, but it's the right thing to say. I feel like they are disruptors that stand up to the system and they fight for justice and equity and inclusion. And they do that when no one else is willing to. They put themselves on the front lines of change when other people are not willing to sacrifice themselves in that way. So we're talking about progressive thinkers. We're talking about innovators and thought leaders that challenge societal assumptions and limitations. Cultural disruptors breaking through boxes, breaking through limitations, and really not allowing other people to keep them in a bubble. So what Black Haven is doing is really aligned to what we have been seeing happening across our globe, across our nation, and in the state of Connecticut with this resurgence of arts and culture and people taking back what belongs to them. Black and brown people taking back our stories and telling our narratives the correct way, the accurate way, and owning our own stories. Also, I want to say that it's not always about trauma, right? We are celebrating our Black joy, our love, and our community. And I feel like Black Haven does that and does it very, very well. When I look at Black Haven and I look at the young emerging arts administrators and leaders, what I'm seeing is a band of people who are taking action, right? We're no longer just talking. We are actually taking action, taking it to the top and putting pressure on the top. And that's exactly what all of the leaders of Black Haven are doing throughout this state. I think that, one thing I heard the other day, and I was like, oh, this holds true to Black Haven, is from our perspective, doing nothing is not an option. That's no longer an option. We are taking action. We are having direct steps to change and impact, and we are moving the needle forward. And so we are shifting culture, right? And everybody that you're going to see and hear from today, they are culture shifters, and that is exactly what they do. They are normalizing what is equitable, what is right, what is just. And they are doing it in ways that they are unapologetic, and they're staying true to themselves. And they are forcing people in the arts to break down barriers. I've been in the arts and culture for a very long time. And it has been a while since I have seen this group of Black and brown people being able to be at the front lines of change and really take on arts and culture and redefine arts and culture and move it forward. And so I feel like we owe them a service to them, a debt to them, to make sure that we are making sure that they're sustaining and that they are thriving and that we're here for them and supporting them. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit about why it's so important to make sure that we are putting financial resources into their pocket, which is why we are here, right? We are here to make sure that not only that we're showing love and that we're showing up within our people space, but also how are we investing resources, not just people resources, but actually dollars into this organization. And so one thing I think many of us know, because we've been through it ourselves, philanthropy has a problem with not being equitable and not getting dollars into Black and brown organizations, Black and brown businesses, Black and brown individuals and artists. And there's a major problem there. There's actually a study that grant makers in the arts released. And this study is about the inequities that exist when it comes to funding distribution issues. And it talks about how on a national and on a local level, there are major gaps in who receives funding, and it's all tied to racial diversity or lack of diversity amongst decision makers. So the Arts Foundation boards, the staffs, the individual donors, the cultural institution leaderships, and the panelists are usually not diverse, and they don't look like Black and brown people, and they don't look young either. And so it's creating this discrepancy in who receives funding. And honestly, Black and brown people only receive about 2% of funding nationwide in arts and culture. And I say that that's a major problem. And so the reason that we need to address this head on is so that organizations like Black Haven and individuals like the people you're going to hear from today, that they thrive and that they sustain and that they're able to be around for a long time. Because these are the people of our future, making change, making the world better for us and everyone else today, and the legacy that they're building. So again, we need to make sure this is a fundraiser. We want to make sure that we donate. We want to make sure that we support, and we want to keep the energy up. I'm not going to hold you long. I just want to say thank you again for having me, and I really hope you enjoy today's panel.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I absolutely love what you said about the culture shifters, and really forcing people to break down those barriers is essential. So let's talk a little bit to our artists and really get into that. And as our theme for today is Black Havens across cities. So we're really talking about pushing those boundaries. All right, y'all. So before we get into those questions, I'm going to briefly introduce our lovely artists so they can tell us a little bit about where they're from and what they do in their cities. So we're actually going to start off with Linda Luz Carrillo.
Hey everybody, what's up? Thank you, Brianna. My name is Linda Luz Carrillo. I am from Hartford, Connecticut, raised in Hartford. And yeah, I do a little bit of everything. I have been, my laptop almost fell. So I'm an educator. I've been teaching visual arts for a good over 4 years now. And I've been doing a lot of that more recently. I do a lot of murals and work with youth and other artists in collaboration on a few things. I went to school for graphic design, so I do dabble in that a lot. A lot of my structure does come from that. I'm Afro-Latina, and I'm super excited to be here. Yeah, I feel really honored to be a part of this space. I was able to watch some of Black Haven last year, and it was pretty impressive. I really enjoyed watching the performances that I saw, and like all that energy that comes out from New Haven. I feel like y'all are out there doing the thing. So it's good to see that, because, I feel like between Bridgeport, Hartford, and New Haven, I feel like, and I want to say Middletown, and there's a few other places too that have been really disruptive. It's cool to see that we're finally starting to really build some type of connectivity, because we need that. So thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for being here. Love it. All right, so now we're going to introduce Razul Branch. Tell us about yourself. Razul, my man, I think you're muted. I cannot hear you.
Sorry about that. Hey, my name is Razul Branch, more affectionately known as Raz. I'm born in Stanford, but raised in Bridgeport, and I'm the owner of BPT Creates, which is a multifunctional event space and artist workshop, as well as bike shop as well too. So I've been engaged in the arts for pretty much all my life. I'm a son of a photographer, so I'm also a photographer as well too. But I got a lot of my art bones working with graffiti and pop artists in the city of New Haven, as well as Bridgeport, and creating providing opportunities for them to engage in public artworks, workshops, and being able to launch and help develop artist work as I enter into the art world.
I love it. I love it. Love it. Thank you so much for sharing. And then we'll have Ro Godwin. Please tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Ro. I am a singer-songwriter. I'm a producer. I don't really know what else to say about myself, y'all, if I'm being 100% honest. I'm coming to you from New Haven, a city I love so much. We love it here. It's great. But Linda Luz, since I'm here, I kind of do want to just connect with you on that tip of like, yo, there's so much art, there's so much good happening all over Connecticut, and to see like certain connections starting to be made like between counties, I think is really powerful. Harkening back to what Adrian was saying, very much exciting in terms of, yo, like just shaking stuff up. I'm excited to see what comes like of this panel and just moving forward. Happy to be here.
Yes, and we're so happy to have you. I'm so glad you're sharing the space with us. And then last but never least, we'll have Chad Brown Springer. Please tell us a little bit about what you do and where you're from as well.
Hello, my name is Chad. I am technically from East Hartford, but have moved sort of all around Connecticut. So I'd just say Connecticut born and raised me and evolved my music and art into what it is. So I am a audiovisual artist. I do some music. I do other things, photography, videography, some puppeteering. I work with Nightfall in Hartford. I've worked with Black Haven before. I rock hard with Salwa and Adrian and the squad on this panel. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, you're also wonderful. Like, I'm so inspired just by all of y'all here today. Thank you so much for being here. And that actually leads us into our next question. I'm actually going to start. We can just really popcorn, be very organic, very fluid with this conversation. If you have something to say, we'd love to hear it. So feel free to speak up, whatever comes to mind. So let me hit y'all with the first question. So the first one is, what comes to mind when you think of the term Black Haven in relation to art and creative expression?
I'll say something. So I've been talking a lot with my friend Jisoo, particularly about these things called counter spaces, which is essentially what happens when minoritized groups or marginalized groups or any group of people that is or demographic that is disenfranchised, making essentially like a structure either to supplement or to replace a bigger institution. And I think that when I think of Black Haven, that's kind of what I think of like, yo, like what we have going on, again, back to what Adrian said, is not serving us in the way that it should. So how do we get by in the meantime? How do we like give ourselves the space and the time to demand better? And I know this is like more of like a like structural definition. I feel like it's very much in my nature to have like a lovey-dovey, like a place where Black people can feel safe and da 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 da. But I feel like that's just not what's on my mind right now. What's on my mind right now is equity. What's on my mind right now is very much justice. And I feel like Black Haven, when I hear the phrase, the opportunity to achieve equity and to achieve safety fiscally and socially, kind of within ourselves, either to supplement or to replace a bigger institution that does not love us, that does not care about us, is kind of the vibe that gives me.
For sure. And I love what you said about equity, because I think especially when it comes to artists of color, you know, we don't always have the resources. We don't always have the funds to do these things. So we have people up here, we're working down here. And if we're both consistently improving, there's that opportunity gap, it lies. It doesn't change. And I think that's something that we really have to, I completely agree with you. When I think Black Haven, although I want to think lovey-dovey, everybody's safe, but that's not the reality for us. We have to make it up here somehow when we're consistently moving with this lateral energy, if you know what I mean. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, I feel like, Black Haven is supposed to help to nurture, develop, expand, provide opportunity. Again, to harken back to the point you made about achieving equity in this system of art. So it's incredibly unequal as far as like the time, attention, and space that's given to more traditional, wider spaces for artists and whatnot. So having these places to be able to nurture that artwork, feature that artwork, and allow it the space to grow and build the muscles necessary, to compete and complete itself, I think is what Black Haven means to me.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely, I love what y'all said already. It resonates a lot with me because, there really isn't a lot of places where we can go to physically. It's mostly virtually, if anything, or like literally at our friends' homes where we feel comfortable in order to create, to embrace who we are, whether that's like something, identity or a creative project that we're working on. I think it's about time, and again, like I'm looking forward to kind of continuing to see how the cities and major cities really come together and push that, because there's like this weird separation that's already happening in the arts individually, and it's really awkward. It's really unnecessary, I think, most of the time, because we all want the same thing, and I think it's a matter of like allowing each other to kind of fall into each other and feel like we can hold each other together and accountable, for things in situations. I think having some type of space, maybe physical even space, might be a good direction into that, because I think we already know that and are intuitive with it. It's a matter of like really everyone trying to be on the same page, which is easier said than done, but I'm glad that it's happening.
And I love what you said about, you talked about how art is separate in different cities and you really just allowing us to fall into each other. I really love that. That actually leads us into our next question, which is, in terms of your community, where does Black art reside? Where does it live? And where does Black art thrive? Where does it grow most? And how is it contributing to your role as an artist? And when you had said leaning into each other, I really thought of, where is art living in our individual cities and how can we allow it to grow?
Tying from the last question into this one, as I'm thinking about Black Haven and watching the world change and simultaneously stay the same while I change myself and feel the same, it seems like movements with intention are like really important. Like if we're going to invest in a thing, if we're going to move forward in this world, the new world, and make an impact, motion as a conglomerate, as like a functioning machine with cogs and like a mechanism, the intention behind what is like moving you matters. Um, and so Black Haven gives me this feeling of having a like finite sort of focal point to punch through, or to punch with impact, or to like move. So like music and art has always been a force of life and substance for me. It's been a force of connectivity. It has grown me and changed me and evolved me in ways that I could never dream of. And I think that that's really the essence of Black art, of art that expresses a truth about our surroundings and our realities, our pains and our joys. It is the essence of art, because if it doesn't have that, then it's something else, really.
Everything you said with me is like all melting into my brain right now. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel that, especially when it comes to when you're creating, when you're making, it has to have this space. It has to have the space not only to be, but also to grow. And I think it's so important that, regardless of what the community you live in, regardless of where the world is going, or, you mentioned that things are changing but are still stagnant. And I think a lot of that change has been brought about by art, and we are the people making that change. So I think everything you said completely resonated with me. So definitely, thank you for sharing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was dope. The word that keeps sticking in my mind is thrive. How does Black art thrive? And I think a lot about the youth when it comes to this, because, and I guess because I'm in the classroom with them all the time, and it's like, it's been really difficult during this time period, but like that moment when you like actually capture, specifically Black youth wanting to engage with the project or develop their own independent thing is when I start to envision, wow, like you have the potential. How do we keep feeding you the tools and the resources for you to want to continue pushing that, and that's what I start to think about when I see people thriving. It starts there. It starts high school, starts before that, it starts at home. But it's like people, us, right, the elders, I'm considering myself an elder at this point. Kids are doing TikToks, I'm like, I don't know, but it's just cool to kind of see that, and I want to continue feeding that, whatever they need. You need this, I got you. You need to build this thing. I don't know how to build things, but we're going to figure it out, or I'm going to find someone to do that. So that's kind of how I envision, thriving, us helping each other to just progress,
Yeah, to piggyback on that too, is that's one of the things that we've been able to do with like our space with BBT Creates. This is our 8th year in existence now, and it's kind of been this space that has collected other programs, movements, organizations, and groups, and being able to house them, so they actually have a place to live and to thrive and develop and whatnot. So we've been doing that with with Black-led improv groups, Black-led theater arts performance groups, as well as musicians and audiovisual folks and whatnot. And I think a key to that is being able to provide the resources, for them to be able to put their best foot forward. So if they're utilizing our space and whatnot, we've got, most of the top audio, video, or visual equipment that they can utilize to produce some of their best programming for, let's say, their podcasts or whatever the case is, or they're having a panel discussion similar to today. They're able to raise the quality of their work so that they can compete with the rest of the world as well. To show that there's really no difference in the quality of this work. So it's really, really important to be able to have that and provide affordable space, as well as the tools necessary to continue to develop this work further.
Kind of going off of what you, Rasul, are saying. First of all, that's incredible. And I just want to hold space and say, like, wow. Second of all, I definitely think that, like, just through like personal current circumstances, I'm realizing that when we depend on one another, when we depend on our community, like a community of creators, we never seem to go without. And I think that being able to pour into one another, just from what we have, whether it's actual like fiscal resources or anything else that you might have, whether it's wisdom or like advice, connections, kind of going back to what Linda Luz was saying about like, yo, I might not have it, but I'm gonna find it. I feel like the way that things come together, I don't know. I think that there's definitely something to that. Like just being able to give people like resources and tools is how Black art continues to thrive. And I don't think that it's anything particular to Connecticut, right? Like part of Chance the Rapper, for example, in Chicago, like he got started, I believe, through a program that was going on at his like library or whatever, where they just bought a bunch of like music equipment or whatever for their community. Similar things happen on more micro levels. One of my favorite artists, his name is Saba. Shout out Pivot Gang. He and his friends just like pooled together their money, got like a bunch of equipment and agreed to share it all. And out of that like space came the likes of like John Doe, No Name was in that collective. So it's just like, yo, like when we get together, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. The happier. Chad, it's not that fun. Because I'm gonna.
So great.
That was everything. That was everything for me.
And to piggyback back on that point again too, like one of my like greatest inspirations was probably, I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary Brooklyn Bohème. I believe it's a Spike Lee film, and it's basically kind of explaining like the whole '90s era of some of the most famous actors and actresses, in history, so to speak, and whatnot. So it was, Spike Lee had this firehouse where everybody was either coming to rehearse or film. Wesley Snipes used to throw house parties, and everybody used to sleep on Wesley's couch, and then Saul Williams, and then like all these different people like cross pollinating. And if it wasn't for like this little network of people being able to provide those kind of resources, kind of centering around Spike as well too, we would have missed out on some of some of the greatest names, in acting and then performance now.
And I absolutely love the conversation, how it's turning into how can we support one another? Because again, the theme of this is really across cities. How can I extend into Hartford? Or how can you extend into Bridgeport? I think it's so important. And the next question that I have for you all, and we touched upon it a little bit, but during your time as an artist, as a creator, as a curator, in which ways have you seen Black art being supported? And if you haven't been seeing it supported, how would you like to see it be supported, especially in the future? And this could include your own work or the work of others. But I think Razul and Ro, you both put it so beautifully. I think, Razul, you're really talking about the physical aspect of giving people spaces and giving people equipment. And then Ro touched upon the humane, the psychological, emotional aspect of giving wisdom, of giving knowledge, of pouring unto another. And I'm just curious to know in which ways you've seen Black art being supported.
We're seeing it more so now. It's starting to enter into more spaces that it typically wasn't presented in. I know that's like, I don't know if it should be considered a conversation about the work that we personally have done, but like that's like the angle that we've tried to come at it with some of the artwork. Like this is good enough to be featured in all these spaces versus just being limited to these, some of the smaller spaces or lesser known spaces and whatnot. And that's not to put them down too, but just speaking to the quality of this artwork, it deserves to be put on the same pedestal as the rest of the artwork being available. So being able to bridge those gaps or bridge as an opportunity into those spaces, that are more heavily utilized by the majority of the art world, and in our little universe of Bridgeport, Fairfield County. Has been tremendous. And now we're seeing more and more spaces like those that typically don't or haven't in the past, are seeing the importance of including these kinds of artists or these kinds of spaces, incorporating into these places that have traditionally had these kind of boundaries up for decades, between accessing black artists and whatnot. So being able to make those relationships, has been really, really important. I've been seeing a lot of it, especially now. I think it's like in hyperdrive now, especially with so much cultural shifting that has happened. And I think in cognitive awareness of these disparities, you're seeing people go into the hyperdrive kind of to make room for these spaces, intentionally make room for these spaces.
I also want to add to that. I think what you said about intentions is it really struck with me because yes, you can make space for an artist, but if you're not intending to do it for the right reasons, you're not really making that space for Black artists. And I think what we really need in order to continue the growth of Black art and continue the appreciation of it is have people who don't identify as Black, Indigenous people of color, have people who don't identify with this group intentionally make space for us and recognize that, our art has always been valuable. It will continue to be valuable, but with the intention that they really care about what we're making, not because we're being tokenized. And I think a lot of people will assume that showcasing Black, Indigenous art is Black, Indigenous, persons of color, art by us, they just assume by showing it that they're doing us justice. But I think there's an intention behind that. And if you place that intention behind it, you're really fueling the support for Black artists. It's more than just hanging up our pictures in a gallery or just coming to our events. It's donating to our initiatives and sitting down and having these conversations such as this one, or listening to these conversations, really being active in the role of Black art today. So thank you so much for naming that. That definitely hit me as an artist as well. I was like, yeah, no, there's intention that has to be behind it too. It can't just be you're here, because then it crosses that line of tokenizing, and that's not what we're here for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, you really want to be in this space on the strength of your own merits and capabilities and abilities and whatnot. And that's something we make very, very apparent, especially when we're talking to our artists. Like, listen, when we're going into these spaces, we're doing these events. This is not like a we're just letting any old thing in because you're a Black artist. It's like, listen, you got to be on top of your game when you do this. And this is just not to impress those folks. This is to impress us. This is to allow us to have that room or have that space and know that, this is where the art is elevating. All right. And this is where the rest of us need to, fill in that room as well and elevate too.
I think part of me wants to push back a little bit on this. So I listened to this podcast called The Read. We love it. It's very good for my health. And every once in a while they talk about, particularly Saweetie, I think is who came up the most recently. And people are like, oh, her verse on this song wasn't great and da 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 and this and that. And the, I guess, hosts of the podcast were like, okay, but how many mediocre verses have we listened to without question? Have we popularized without question when it comes to even male rappers of color, right? And I think that the same question kind of applies here or it's coming up within me of to be Ro, you're surrounded by white people, so you have to be on your game. You have to be this and that and da 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 da. Again, even if it's not just for those white people, I feel like there's something to the fact that there's something to it that I have to hold myself to a standard that people outside of my demographic do not have to hold themselves to, just to be able to prove my position in the room in a way that nobody else is proving their position. I feel like this, again, kind of strikes back to me of yo, this is an issue of equity, because I do acknowledge, Razul, that this is how things need to be, for now. But is it right that it is this way? I think that's kind of the pushback that's happening within me. Why is it that I have to be excellent or whatever when the excellence is already inherent to me as an artist, for being an artist, for being somebody who is Black, who is queer? I don't know. That's me.
I get the pushback on that. I totally understand the pushback on that, and that's not necessarily the intention of it. Again, it's about nurturing, creating nurturing space for artistry. Period. At whatever level that it comes to you, that's where you meet it. But at the same time, too, there's a particular standard that either I set or the other caliber artists that we're working with we set, that we personally try to ascend to and whatnot. Like I said, it's trying to remove the colonized mind, so to speak, of what is art or whatever the case is, and kind of throwing that whole thing away. What their definition of art is and whatnot. But yeah, there's a particular level of standard that we want to see our artists perform at amongst each other and whatnot, and to know that quality work, what quality work is. I don't think you can necessarily. We can have arguments on what quality is, but I think you know a good product when you see a good product and whatnot, and that's how we want to feel about the art regardless when it comes to us and whatnot. I'm like, this is great. I feel this from this. This is where you should be going. And not only just tell them like you got to be better, but this is how it gets better. These are a couple of tools that you can use to be better or to get to this particular point and whatnot.
There's a sort of anxiety that comes up, I think, when we talk about having a specific metric of quality. Like when you hear like common sense, this is common sense, or like this is the standard, and then common sense is not common for everyone. Everyone thinks and perceives a thing very differently. So that I know that in my art and my music, I don't have an interest in competing. I'm sort of doing it more for a therapeutic nature. So like if I'm satisfied with my art, I'm gonna go with it and make it happen. But when you're like doing a thing for the first time and you're like trying to reach this, I think like the perfectionist and like the goal to strive towards is great, but like it's the execution and like doing the thing that's important, because you'll like eventually learn how to get to that thing, or like you'll go to YouTube University and like figure out how to make the thing in the way that you want to make the thing. But like just now I was like making a video and I had these big ideas. I wanted basically like a High School Musical moment in this thing, and like I just don't have the access to the people or the time or the tools or the camera for the thing inside my head. So I DIY'd it. I made a something else in a way that satisfied the narrative, an idea that I needed to get out, and also it's important to like execute the thing. You like have to do it. You have to complete it. You have to release it, because that's really what like makes the difference of an artist and a creator, and putting that thing out there, like battling past your demons and your anxiety and your whatnot, to like just pour out this thing because you needed to pour out that thing. Like I think my art is pretty selfish because I'm doing it for me, and I'm just like, you guys happen to like it, which is so great. Thank you so much. Don't stop liking it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just like, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh no, you go.
We love your music, Chad. So I was thinking, I kept going back to how are we being supported, or how, Black artists are being supported. I'm Afro-Latina, so that includes that. I don't know why. We can talk about that another time. But yeah, just like being reasonable with pay. I think a lot of artists, regardless if it's singing, dancing, art making, creating, like, I don't, especially, if we're really putting in the time, the effort, we're talking about the brainstorming sessions, the meetings, the follow-ups, and we have to physically a lot of the times buy the materials in order to figure out, get the connections. And it's like, I think a lot of that is underlooked. And when we're asking for pay, and that's even uncomfortable. I feel like a lot of artists, especially up and coming, are still learning to figure out, oh, what is my worth? What is my quality? Is it worth it? And I think once we get past that, and then we're then asking, for the proper amount for really our survival, more often than not, it's like, then they're like, we're being lowballed. They're like, oh, we can't afford that. Or what if we give you this? And it's like, and don't get me wrong, a lot of times we end up taking it. I've definitely taken money where I feel like I could have just been like, that could have been more than, what I was given. But because we don't know any better most of the time, especially coming into it, it's like, but I think really compensating the quality and the intention of the artist, you can't just give them what they're not worth. Give us what we're not worth. So.
That's something that we talk to artists a lot about when they start putting their work out there. It's like, what do you want to make? What do you think your time is worth for an hour of your time into this piece of work? All right, boom, let's start there. How much were your materials? All right, let's add that into the course there. All right, how many hours did you put into making this piece? All right, what do you got your price? What are your peers in your other programming or this other style of artwork or medium of artwork, what are they charging for their work as well too? All right, well, if you consider yourself that, then there you go. That's where you are. So it's so interesting how much of a hurdle that is for artists, especially like Black artists, to try and figure out how do I price this thing. I'm being featured in this place that I've never been in before. Like I don't know how to price my work. Should it be $30,000? Should it be $3,000? I don't know. And just having there's we kind of figure out like common sense, reasonable expectations for what what do you want to make for this art, and how much time did you put into effort did you put into making this piece.
Love that you're talking about the breakdown of this is what it's worth. This is your time. This is an hourly. This is what this costs. That's great.
I love this.
I think I'm so sorry, Bree. Kind of off of that, I think that it requires like a certain amount of vulnerability, you know what I'm saying? Of like, yo, like I was talking to Jisoo and also another artist, Mooncha. And it can and my friend Tech Wilikicha. And we were just talking about Tech and I were like reminiscing about an old show where we played a specific venue where we were there like all night until like the wee hours of the morning, and we both walked away with like $20 from that show, like $17.38, something along those lines. And to me, it gives very much never again. It gives very much like we each know that the other is worth so much more than that. And I think that to be able to have open and honest conversations about like, yo, I actually got paid this much from doing this show. You should not be charging any less than this. Like to be able to reach across like to other musicians, like regardless of like the county, regardless of the town, regardless of the demand. And I would even dare say regardless of the discipline. Like I feel like dancers can talk with poets, who can talk with singers, who can talk with engineers, who can talk with like whoever else, and just be like, yo, like this is what I was paid for this show. And being able to build that database, not only in ourselves, but among one another, I think is so, so important.
And I have a question for all of you. I'm just thinking back to Chad. You mentioned about the difference between being an artist and a creator. Can you speak a little bit more to that in terms of kind of what Ro was telling us about I got paid this much for this and this much for that, and then realizing you may be being underpaid for what you're worth. How does that speak to the difference between an artist's work and a creator's work, or are they intertwined? Yeah, I'm just interested to hear a little bit more about that.
I think they're partially intertwined. I started having this idea, having a conversation with my sister, Janika. She does like grant work and is an artist herself and a teacher and has an adorable puppy. But we have some nice conversations. And so like we were talking about like, her kind of sometimes struggling to make art and me feeling like it never stops because I always got something to say or something's coming through. And it boiled down to like the intention behind what you're trying to say. Do you have a message? What are you trying to like push out and put out? Do you have like an origin to what you're really aiming to say? And as we talked, that was basically like the singular breakdown between like an artist, a creator, and like not. If it's great to mimic someone's art or like have a starting point, but can you start it from your own accord and like go through the process and like connect to it and feel it and release it and execute it in whatever way that sort of looks like. um yeah.
Wonderful. And then just kind of drawing on all the things that we were talking about in the past questions. I guess my next question for you all would be, coming from all these different communities, how can we as artists, as creators, as musicians, as poets, as spoken word artists, whatever we do or whatever we consider ourselves as, how can we uplift Black artists in neighboring communities? So now we're not just talking about supporting people in our hometown that we know by word of mouth. We're talking about, how can I connect with Ro? How can I connect with Linda Luz? How can I connect with Chad if I am not in the area? How can we do that? And where can the connections be drawn? And how should we approach that?
I think by creating networks, amongst each other, kind of like circuits or whatever the case is. I used to hear my dad talk about it all the time. He's an ex-musician, or was an ex-musician, and he used to refer to the Chitlin Circuit all the time. And it was this, it was this organized network of safe spaces for Black musicians to play throughout the South and the Midwest and whatnot. And I think that's a similar approach to here, is that we all have spaces and places that we use to create, and we use to showcase and develop other artists. And I think we should make, again, going back to intention, make it an intention with each other to associate, utilize, and connect with each other's space. So if one of us is having an event, maybe we get together on multi calls like this and start, going over a calendar of what I have, so we don't have too much overlapping, of events or whatnot. Or if we do, we plan it out in a sensible way that maybe we can do 2 or 3 events in a single night or something. But I think, more conversations like this with more creators and more artists about what's actually happening in these spaces. And then sitting down and making a plan, like we're going to brunch. Like, I'm coming to your gallery next week with a group of people to support your event, and vice versa.
As Rue said earlier, about vulnerability, the internet is a deep, devastating, and connective thing that can also, have us very divided, but also have us find each other and strangers in ways you could never imagine. But I think sometimes, like, reaching out to somebody is not a good feeling, to say like, I need you, or like, I want to collaborate, or like, if we can do this. And like, it doesn't always work, because you could reach out and they could just not respond, and that happens. Life happens or whatever. But to lead with vulnerability, of like taking the shot, of like taking the chance, whether it works out or not, uh, I I also think that's a part of the, like, intent. Like, I'm going for it. I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I'm gonna do it anyways. You know, I know I've worked with Linda a couple times, and Rue a couple times, and like, what was it? What was the face? Why did you why did you make the
Because
face?
it's very much Ro.
I, oh, sorry, Ro. My bad. Sorry.
All right.
Ro a couple times, and like, those they came from friendship and network, and it came from serendipitous moments, and just like having a community together, and like, yeah. And sorry, bro.
It's okay. I think Chad is the only one among us who like actively uses my government name, which is why it's Ruth. It's no secret. So I think that I understand this time. But definitely off of what you were saying, Chet, is just the fact that I think that it
I
is
like
important.
chat.
Check Chet out. So I think that I think that like part of what you were saying is very much like, yo, like it is scary. It's scary to like put yourself out there and to ask questions and to ask to network and stuff like that. But Nah, it's really the power of friendship. It's really the power of friendship. I think that being able to form strong bonds or whatever with people, or even a sense of familiarity. Let me tell you the story of how I joined Fat Astronaut. I'm no longer in Fat Astronaut, but here's how I joined. So I used to live in West Hartford. Stuff went down at home, so I ran away to New Haven, which has been my home, and it's been beautiful, and I love it. And I remember making a friend. His name was Dylan McDonald. I was like, yeah, like it's cool that like you're in this band like called Fat Astronaut. And then I saw them play, and then I saw this cat Chad, and I was like, Chad, we knew each other from back in the day. I don't know if you remember me, but anyways, I asked Dylan because I was too afraid to approach Chad at that point, because I was very much I was very we love that. We love that. But I was very much intimidated. So I was like, yo, Dylan, I'm gonna crash your rehearsal. Is that okay? To which he was just like, knowing that he didn't have a choice. So then I sat in on a rehearsal, and then I was in the band. And I think that people underestimate the power of just like, yo, like you never know like what true, like genuine, like love for other people can do for you. And I think that there's this myth that like all the opportunities are in New York, and we all have to fight each other down there, and we all have to fight each other to those spaces, to like what else is near, like Toronto's not near, but like the vibes, like let's get to North Carolina, let's get to Atlanta, let's figure out how to like pop off over there, as if it's not more competitive. I don't know. But I think that at the end of the day, like the Issa Rae method states that networking across is how we all survive. Networking across is how we build deep community and meaningful community. And if it hadn't been for like having those connections or whatever, I don't know that I would be an artist. Like, I don't know that I would be making music.
So I'm like a firm believer of hyping people up. Yo, showing up and then just like celebrating other people in their performance, their space, their showcasing. It's so wonderful. I think naturally, because that's something that I do and get a lot from my personal family, my intimate family, that I enjoy, doing that. Like, I will cheer you on till the very end. You're probably gonna have to tell me to stop at some point, but I think doing that is awesome, and it also gets people excited and feeling wanted and desired, and it's just like overall just joyous, So always bringing that on. Don't go too hard, but also hype people up.
I love that. I love that. So I expect to see you all at my concerts. I expect to see you all there hyping me up. I'll be at yours in your galleries. Let's go. I'll bring a little blowhorn. I'm gonna do that. I love that. So this is pretty much bringing us to the end of our conversation, but I just wanted to say that I really appreciated sharing the space with you all. You all offered such beautiful insight today. And thank you just for joining us for Black Havens Across Connecticut. I personally I'm so inspired by every single one of you. And I cannot wait to see what you all create in the future. And as for our viewers, please, please, please make sure to donate to Black Haven by texting 4144 to BLKHVN. That is BLKHVN, to help fund our initiatives, such as Black Haven Film Festival, as well as our Oasis concert series. Last but never least, please, please do not forget to follow us on Instagram at Black Haven Connecticut to stay caught up with our events. Thank you all and have a wonderful night. Mwah.